Greetings, fellow adventurers. I'm Max with Peak D&D.
And I'm Ben. Welcome to the Peak.
We're here in the Rocky Mountains helping you elevate your game in 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons and possibly life.
In this episode of Peaked Interests, we're talking about race.
So, let's roll some initiative and get to it.
So if you're caught up with the 101 series, that means you've got a good understanding of what the basic classes, or day jobs, are in 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons.
Yeah.
Are we still rolling, or? Yes. Oh, all right. Nice. Why, hello there. It's me, Asmodeus, Lord of the Ninth, Prince of all Devilkind, and other titles redacted. And thanks to a special arrangement with Peak D&D, I won't tell you which of them sold their souls for it, but I think you'll be pleasantly surprised. I'm here to tell you about how I decompress after a long day of pulling the souls of mortals from their gasping husks. When I find I need to decompress, I do it with Coco. Coco's Hollow, that is, my favorite cosplayer and streamer on Twitch. There's nothing quite like settling in with a nice bowl of raw cabbage and kale. What, you were expecting delicious food in hell? And watching Coco go and command her minions to do her dark bidding. It's her sinister wit and diabolical charms that touched me. Who do you think sent her those wings? Join her every Thursday through Sunday, 8 to midnight. It's a devilish good time. So commands the mighty Asmodeus. I know I'll be watching.
I hate it when they do that.
Asmodeus.
Okay, if you'd like a refresher on class, you can check out our first one here.
And the second one. Meow. Today, continuing your D&D 101 education, Max and I are going to talk about the sensitive subject of race.
Nothing better than two middle-aged white dudes talking to you about race.
Totally qualified. Fortunately, we're going to keep our discussion about race within the confines of the fantasy races of Dungeons & Dragons. That being said, Black Lives Matter, and sadly, racism is still a very real problem.
We here at Peak D&D believe in treating people like people and punching Nazis. If y'all can't get down with that, there's the big-ass door.
Well said. Okay, races. Yes, after you pick out your class, it's time to start thinking about your character's race in Dungeons & Dragons.
In the name of both simplicity and brevity, we're going to keep this video to covering only what's in the Players Handbook.
Wizards of the Coast has put out some alternate rules regarding race in Tosh's Cauldron of Everything, sort of a build your own benefits, but as this is your beginner's course in Dungeons & Dragons, those are a little outside the scope of this video.
As Picasso said, learn the rules like a pro, so you can break them like an artist.
There are 9 different races you can choose from within the Player's Handbook. Each one comes with one of their own sets of traits, benefits, or flavor. And since this is my line, we're going to start with my favorite, humans.
Vanilla.
No more food metaphors. We did that in the last 2. I'm stuffed.
Fair enough. Humans are the most generic race in the Player's Handbook.
You basic.
They come in all different shapes, sizes, and colors, from cities, from the country, from everywhere.
Humans have a speed of 30. This means that if you're a human character, you take your move action, you can move 6 squares on the board. You also know how to speak Common, the language most everyone knows as it is the most common, and another language of your choice.
You also get to boost all 6 of your ability scores by 1, unless you're using the variant rules, which you should.
You absolutely should. The human variant rules are why humans are my favorite. Instead of bumping up each of your ability scores by 1, you only get to do that with 2. But you get to choose a skill to have proficiency in, and you get a feat at first level.
Feats are pretty cool. You can find a list of the ones in the Player's Handbook on page 165. There are some pretty nifty things you can do, and starting with one of them is handy. However, most of the other races you get to choose from start with more than one. So
I guess that's true, and honestly, feats are something that you'll have the option to choose once you begin playing and leveling up your character. So unless you really want to be a human or have a character concept that revolves around having a feat at level 1, there are some other fun options.
Like Halflings. While I've only played a handful of sessions with Illinsworth, I have quite enjoyed my pint-sized punk. Being a small creature, standing between 3 and 4 feet tall, has its advantages.
And being able to reroll ones, that's not nothing.
No, sir, it is not.
Halflings are slower than most other races on account of their short little legs, but because of those short little legs, they can move through the spaces of creatures that are bigger than they are, which isn't normally allowed.
There are 2 different types of halflings, Stout and Lightfoot. The Lightfoots have the ability to hide behind people, and the Stouts are strong against poison.
When it comes to ability scores, all halflings get a +2 bonus to their dexterity score. The Lightfoots get an additional +1 to charisma, while the Stouts get a +1 to their constitution.
So whatever the number you happen to have in those abilities, make sure you add your bonuses. And as for languages, halflings speak halfling and common.
Sticking with size, we have the Gnomes, the only other small race in the Player's Handbook.
Gnomes, like halflings, have their own language, are typically between 3 and 4 feet tall, and come in 2 varieties, forest and rock.
Forest gnomes love nature and are a little lighter on their feet. They get a +1 to their dexterity and have some inborn magical abilities.
They have a cantrip they can cast, Minor Illusion, and can talk to small beasts, not unlike Radagast the Brown in the Hobbitses movies.
Rock gnomes are a little sturdier and craftier. They get an additional +1 to their constitution and have what's called Artificer's Lore. This means that if you're a rock gnome, you get to double your proficiency bonus on any history checks regarding magic, alchemical, or technological items you might encounter.
And you get to be a tinker. This means having proficiency in Tinker's tools, and for a nominal cost of both time and money, being able to make a little gadget, a wind-up toy, a music box, or a lighter.
Now, that might not sound like much, but trust me, with a little ingenuity and some good timing, any one of those can give you the upper hand or possibly tip an encounter in your favor.
Regardless of which type of gnome you choose, there are some benefits that all gnomes share. These include getting to add 2 to your intelligence, being able to see in the dark, and having advantage on any intelligence, wisdom, and charisma saves against magic.
As we move up the list in height, we are moving towards the dwarf.
Oh, Gord, you beautiful beet farmer, you. Like the other vertically challenged races we've covered so far, dwarves have their own language they know in addition to common, have a speed of 25, and come in 2 varieties.
Unlike halflings and gnomes, however, dwarves are not considered small creatures. They are medium-sized creatures.
They also get to ignore the standard penalty that gets applied to movement while wearing heavy armor, on account of their burlier, stockier builds.
All dwarves have a +2 to their constitution, the ability to see in the dark, or dark vision, and are able to use battle axes, hand axes, light hammers, and war hammers, regardless of their class.
Yeah, they've also got the same benefits against poison as the stout halflings, with advantage on their save and resistance against the damage. Plus, dwarves are known for their masonry.
They're really good at identifying stonework they encounter, being not only proficient, but getting to double their proficiency bonus on every history check that involves stonework.
And they're industrious little fellows. Every dwarf has spent a little bit of time as an apprentice, learning to be a smith, a mason, or a brewer, and therefore having proficiency in the appropriate set of tools.
And lastly, you get to choose between being a hill dwarf or a mountain dwarf. Hill dwarves get a +1 to wisdom and get an extra hit point at every level.
Mountain dwarves, on the other hand, get a +2 to their strength and are able to wear light or medium armor off the bat.
After talking about Gimli, let's move to his lithe, arrow-shooting, snuffleupagus sliding, best good buddy, Legolas.
Elves are medium creatures with a speed of 30. No matter which type of elf you choose, you get a +2 to your dexterity, you can see in the dark, and you've got proficiency in the perception skill.
You can speak Elvish and Common, have advantage on any saves against being charmed, and you can't be magically put to sleep.
Elves are also the only race with a sleep mechanic. Unlike the rest of the races in the Player's Handbook, elves only need 4 hours of sleep. And it's not even real sleep, it's like a meditative trance. Which means, when it comes to setting up watch at night around your camp, elves are kinda awesome.
clutch. There are 3 different types of elves you can choose from: wood, high, or dark.
Wood elves are, as you might have guessed, more naturey. They get a +1 to their wisdom, are able to hide when only lightly obscured when outside, and have a speed of 35.
They, like their high elf cousins, have a few weapons they're automatically able to use. These are bows, both long and short, and swords, also short and long.
High elves are your more magically minded and learned elves. They get to choose a cantrip from the wizard spell list. They have an extra language, and unsurprisingly, they also get a bonus to their intelligence.
Now, dark elves are a little bit different because they come from the deep underground realm known as the Underdark. This gives them some significant advantages, like being able to see really, really well in the dark. They have double the normal dark vision range, which is 60 feet. They can see 120. But this benefit also comes with some drawbacks.
Alas, it does. It turns out being super good at seeing in the dark makes you kind of shitty at seeing in the light. Dark elves have disadvantage on their attack rolls and perception checks while basking in the rays of the sun.
Drow, as they're also known, do get some fun spell powers though. They can cast Dancing Lights at 1st level, Fairy Fire when they get to 3rd, and Darkness at 5th.
And evidently, being subterranean makes you automatically more charming. Drow get a +1 bonus to their charisma scores, which also serves as the ability for their innate spells.
They also have proficiency in short swords, rapiers, and hand crossbows.
We just covered elves. Half-Elves, Playboy?
Sure, I love Astian. How many apostrophes are in that?
Half-Elves are the bastard degenerate children of forbidden love between elves and humans.
No, don't listen to him. No consensual legal love should ever be forbidden, baby. It's jazz. Do what you want.
No, Ben's right. It ain't about who you love, it's about do you love.
And we could do a whole video on that, but let's get back to this one, shall we?
Half-Elves are half-human and, well, half-elf. And because of that, they have a few traits from each.
Inherited from their elven side, they have the ability to see in the dark, and the same protection against charms and sleep, which equates to advantages on saves versus charm, and not being able to be magically put to sleep.
From their human side, they get some versatility.
Right.
You can choose 2 skills to have proficiency in, and 2 ability scores to pump up by 1.
For Astian, those scores were intelligence and constitution, and I wanted him to be good at arcana checks and investigation checks. He has no apostrophes in his name.
Half-elves also get to pick an extra language, have apostrophes in their names, to go along with the languages they know, Common and Elvish, and have a speed of 30, and get to add a +2 to their charisma.
I don't know if I want to move on to the next one. I mean, after what you said about Jastian and his name and a human and an elf, what are you going to say about a human and an orc? Just make another wisecracking joke? That's what you do, Mr. Jokey, Mr. Jokes about love is love, man.
Come on, man. You know I love half-orcs. Moose cat! Cacao!
Half-orcs are medium creatures, ranging from 5 to over 6 feet tall, and they have a speed of 30 feet.
They get a +2 to their strength, a +1 to constitution, can see in the dark, and know Common and Orcish.
The rest of their features are on the more ferocious, don't fuck with me side. They have proficiency in intimidation, they get to roll an extra die on every critical hit, and they've got what's called relentless endurance.
Yeah, half-orcs are hard to kill. This means when you take enough damage to drop to 0 hit points, you don't have to start making death saving throws like every other puny race. Instead, you get to stay on your feet and keep fighting. Albeit with only 1 hit point, but still...
Half-orcs just keep on coming. Relentless endurance. It doesn't work all the time. You can only do it once a day. Evidently, you need about 8 hours of good sleep before you can punch death in the face again and say, not today.
Now, we only have a couple left, and we've saved the most visually fun races for last. Let's do Tieflings first.
Tieflings are a race with diabolical origins, as in, at some point in their bloodline, which is mostly human, it got mingled in with a little bit of devilishness.
Yeah, and because of this, they have some pretty nifty magical powers and exceptional physical traits, like horns, and tails, and pupilless eyes, and skin tones that can be red or purple. Neat!
Tieflings can see in the dark, the normal 60-foot range, and have a speed of 30, and they have resistance to fire damage.
They get a +2 to their charisma, a +1 to their intelligence, they know Infernal as a language in addition to Common, and they have some spell-like abilities they grow into, not unlike the Dark Elves.
Yep, they start out with Thaumaturgy as a cantrip. At 3rd level, they get Hellish Rebuke, which is the basic D&D equivalent of, "No, fuck you, bro. I'm rubber, you are glue." And at 5th level, they can cast the Darkness.
Finally, we have saved the tallest for last. Dragonborn.
Now, unlike the previous 3 races that Max and I have mentioned, Dragonborn are not, as it might appear, half dragon, half human.
Get your mind out of the gutter.
They are their own unique thing, hatched from eggs long ago in the realms of Faerun.
Though, to be fair, they look a lot like reptilian humanoids. No tail, no wings, but definitely scaly, and considered medium creatures despite being like 6 or 7 feet tall.
They've got a speed of 30. They can speak Common and Draconic. They get a +1 to Charisma and a +2 to Strength. Not to mention, they've got Draconic ancestry.
Every Dragonborn is descended from one of 10 types of main dragons, and whichever type you choose affects 2 of your Dragonborn traits, your breath weapon and damage resistance.
Now, depending on the lineage of your great-great-great-great-grand dragon, you can either breathe acid, lightning, poison, cold, or fire. Not all the time, but at least once a day, and whatever you breathe, you also have resistance to that type of damage.
Whatever type you choose, your breath weapon is an area of effect attack. So instead of having to pick one enemy and going, I'm going to breathe my awesome dragon nastiness on you, your awesome dragon nastiness will either be a cone or a line that you spray out of your mouth and capable of hitting many opponents.
It's more of a to whom it may concern type of attack. And that is your accidentally, though almost completely heightest rundown of the 9 primary races in 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons.
Hey, thanks for sticking around and hanging out with us today.
Hopefully we piqued your interests.
And gave you something to think about to help you elevate your game.
Now let us know in the comments below what your favorite fantasy race is in Dungeons and Dragons, if it's one that we covered here, or something that came out after the Player's Handbook from another source book.
And for more Peak D&D content, roll to hit that subscribe button. Each subscriber we get is another experience point that brings our channel closer to leveling up.
And make sure to drop the wardings around that notification bell so you don't get skipped and miss your turn.
Check back here every Wednesday and Saturday for more Dungeons & Dragons content.
And help the channel level up by casting Bigby's thumbs up. Like this video, that helps too. Until then, adventurers, keep on climbing.
Catch you next time up here at the Peak.
It sound right, boy.
Ben.
I'm scared to move on to the next one. I mean, after what you said about a human and an elf, what are you going to say about a human and an orc?
Come on, man. Crack one bad joke about bloodlines and Huddenly or Herbert Spencer.
Herbert, who is Herbert?
He is he was a sociologist who actually is the one who hijacked Darwin's theory of social Darwinism, because Darwin was all about cooperation, not competition. But Herbert Spencer was like someone who hijacked his ideas to enforce like racist ideology, essentially.
Oh, well, that's not great.
No. I know Draggy. I miss Draggy. He's a good dude.
He's my one-legged dwarf character. We called him Draggy the Dwarf. But you also get to choose a skill to have him try that again. So close.
Mm-hmm.
So close.
Come on, man. You know I love half-orcs. Moose Cat!
It's a thing of beauty! Orc man love! It's like muskrat love?
Muskrat.
I don't know. Muskrat Susie, half-orc Sam. Do the jitterbug down in Moose Cat land. You never heard Muskrat Love? Oh, come on, dude. It's an old 70s song, dude. It's good. Muskrat Susie, Muskrat Sam, do the jitterbug down in Muskrat Land and the shimmy. And Sammy's so skinny.